Hello and welcome. I am Scarpalock, and this is City of Heroes on the Rebirth server with our Stalker Shrike. She has 2.1 million experience now at level 33. 377,000 XP needed to get to level 34. 35 is where we get our next power. And we have over 15, close to 16 million influence. We have upgraded our um, enhancers a little bit to reduce endurance, increased our fast healing, and level 34, I think we're going to probably add something to Shockwave. Not sure how much. I also want to add to instant healing, resilience. We definitely want to get this to. Maybe we'll do this one next and get the resistance done. 1 to Shockwave, 2 to resilience, and get that finished. Eventually, with integration, we need to enhance the healing on it, right? Because it does have a plus 50% regeneration rate that ignores enhancements and a plus 100% regeneration rate that apparently allows the enhancements. So it dramatically increases our regeneration rate while it's running. And it's a toggle, so it's always on. And this is also always on. So we're going to want to up these quickly. In the meantime, we're working on a story arc for Tina Chung about the Freak Show and Drek. And we just defeated Clamor Boy. And now she says, it seems that the freaks' recent defeat at your hands really shook their faith in their leader Drek. I thought the freaks were chaotic before, but now their inner squabbling has descended into an all-out war. Someone's going to have to stop the freak show. So we have to defeat their leaders and their crews. These guys are in Atlas Park, so we will just take the train to one of my favorite zones and head over there. So one of the interesting things that came up on my guild, they were talking about, I guess some new update or something that's coming out for World of Warcraft that's been the juggernaut of the MMO community since probably about a year after City of Heroes came out. Maybe 6, 8, 9 months after City of Heroes came out, something like that, was when World of Warcraft launched. And it quickly became the biggest MMO in history. When City of Heroes launched and got a couple 100,000 subscribers, that was actually considered pretty decent. Star Wars Galaxies at the time had like 300,000. When it launched, it expanded to 300,000, and that was considered huge. Because EverQuest had like 150,000. I mean, back in the old days, they didn't have that many users, and then World of Warcraft came along and cracked the million mark very quickly, and I think at one point there were 30 million people or something playing World of Warcraft around the world. So that makes City of Heroes, of course, look quite puny. And but anyway, what these guys were talking about was housing and how World of Warcraft really doesn't have much in the way of player housing, and they had almost nothing. Well, I think they said the first player housing, and I could be wrong about this, is just what my guildmates were saying. But they said that the first player housing came out in 2014, which was almost, 9 years or something after World of Warcraft had been developed. And there were lots of other games that had player housing before that. Star Wars Galaxies had player housing in 2003 when it came out, or 2004. I mean, they had player housing all along in Star Wars Galaxies. In 2011, I think shortly after it went live, when it went live, Star Wars: The Old Republic had your own starship, which was kind of like your house, and then eventually, by the end of 2011, I think 2012, you could get like an actual house and that kind of thing. In Star Wars Galaxies, they had guild halls as well as player housing, and of course, in City of Heroes, by the time City of Villains came out, they had bases, right, which is like a guild hall, kind of like player housing, and So City of Heroes has had something similar to player housing since 2005. I know that Elder Scrolls Online has player housing. I believe Lord of the Rings Online had player housing. Boy, I'm really getting unlucky with the reses. They're all resing. This has been, I think, 100% in the first 4. So player housing has been a thing in a lot of games. And so somebody was saying, well, World of Warcraft was slow to the was slow to join the pack, and also that then again I haven't played it, so I'm just saying what they said, that the housing isn't very good, right? That it's not very feature rich. And what I said, and I stand by this, is most player housing isn't feature rich, and most player housing leaves a lot to be desired. One of the things that I liked about City of Heroes is when they implemented stuff, they made sure that it was implemented well. And so when they implemented capes were implemented really well. When they implemented bases were implemented really well. When they implemented PvP was implemented pretty well. So sometimes it took them a long time to implement something, but when they did it right. Usually they did a good job on it. There are a few things that I've complained about that I feel weren't executed well, but in general, City of Heroes was very good on execution. And the things that they didn't execute well are not major things in the game, like a base, right? They're minor things like the outdoor maps. It's a minor feature of the game. It's not a major feature of the game, right? And um, so what did they do right in City of Heroes that I think a lot of other MMOs don't do right? I think one of them is just the control. The base editor gives you a huge amount of control of where you place objects and how you can rotate them and how many of them there are and that kind of thing. And one of the problems I had, I think it was Lord of the Rings Online, and I think Elder Scrolls Online is the same way, is a lot of the player housing is very limited. That is to say, you get, for example, you have a room like this, and there are little like anchors to the wall, and you click on the anchor and you can only put one of a very small number of items in that spot. So you can either put like a cabinet, a bookshelf, or a painting there, and that's it. And that makes almost all the houses look essentially the same, and it prevents you from being able to be creative with your dwelling. And one of the reasons people want player housing is to be creative. We're getting into some extra plus or +3 guys instead of +4, or +2 rather. These guys are +1 to the mission, right? Which we were talking about last episode. So one of the things that I think City of Heroes did a nice job on was giving you that flexibility within the base, that you could build some really creative and cool stuff. And I feel like a lot of other MMOs don't do that. Now, what World of Warcraft does, I don't know, because I've never tried it. I mean, I played World of Warcraft for like 2 weeks. Back in whenever level 65 was the maximum level. I remember that quite clearly for some reason. It was either 60 or 65. I remember seeing level 65 NPCs. I don't remember if the players were allowed to go to 60 or 65, but it would like they had just upped the level max from 50. And so I feel like it was 65 was the max, but I could be wrong. But it was a long time ago. I played it for like 2 weeks. I absolutely hated it. Went back to City Heroes. And I don't want to get into why I hated it. I'm not here to like harsh on another game. I'm just sort of talking more about the player housing and what is it that players want from player housing. I think the ability to be creative and build a distinctive home for yourself that looks cool and is different from other people's is a really important characteristic of player housing that most players really want. They also like player housing for the storage, right? It gives you a base of operations, and from there you can, put a chest or a vault or something in your house, and then you can store more stuff there, and you can use it to go and get your stuff, right? And you know where all your stuff is, and it's one place. And like if you're in City of Heroes, there's a portal to your super base in again, good implementation. Every single zone has a super base portal. So if you have a superhero base or a villain base, no matter where you are no more than one end of the zone to the other away from entering that base. And if you've built teleporters in the base, which you can do by constructing them, and depending on whether you're in the live server or not, you may have to quote unquote pay for them. But if you have teleporters in the base and they're powered, and you have the control for them, um, you can build teleporters to every zone in the city, and you can use the base as a transportation point where you go from Atlas Park back to your base and then back out to any zone you want. And you can do that from any zone to any zone. And so that definitely makes it very convenient, right? And so that's kind of what players want, is that ability to have extra convenience that they feel they've earned by gameplay, right? So if I've earned that convenience, right, because I've earned enough prestige for my supergroup or enough influence or whatever it happens to be, in this case prestige for the supergroup from adventuring in supergroup mode, and our group has built up enough prestige, then that gives us the ability to teleport wherever we want, and that's a reward for all the hard work and effort we put into the game as a group, right? And the same thing is true with most other player housing options. 3 misses in a row. That's the whole idea, is that, okay, well, if I have, say, a big enough house that holds 3 chests and a strong box, I have that because I adventured for a long time and I got a lot of money and I was able to buy a big house, and then I get rewarded. So you have the creativity outlet, you have the reward aspect where you're getting a benefit from the work that you did, and then you have the convenience that the house provides you with storage, possibly provides you with a transportation point, right? Maybe you can have like a stable in your house where you keep a horse and that kind of thing. And so that is something people like from housing, because it gives them benefits that are reasonable and make sense and are rewards for what they've done, and it makes the game more convenient and fun. And so that's kind of what people want from player housing. But I think one of the biggest things they want that is very hard to it seems very hard for developers to be willing to give you. Getting my butt pounded here. Too many lieutenants, and they keep rezzing. Let's placate that guy. A lot of people also want the creative outlet. And I think a lot of the developers make the mistake of saying, well, you can essentially unlock a house. When they build a house that is only has certain anchor points, and you can only put certain things in certain anchor points, what you're essentially doing is not creating your own home or decorating your own home. What you're essentially doing is unlocking the house that the developers built, right? So these developers decided to put a picture or a bookcase or a cabinet here, and they decided to put a bed or a couch there, and you unlock the ability to put that in your house by doing certain things, and then you unlock the design of the house that the developers had already created. So you're not really creating anything, they created it, and you're just sort of unlocking it and putting it in place, right? And as someone who likes to be creative with things like this, I find that kind of unlocking motif very objectionable. But it's not rare in video games, and I think it's the whole aspect of unlocking what we've already built for you is there because it makes it easier to balance in terms of design, right? They don't have to account for every possible thing you could do in a house, right? They already know what all of your options are, and you're just picking from among the options that they've already developed, which makes it easier for them to bug check. It makes it easier for them to um, to control and to troubleshoot, and it gives them and they have to have less options in the database, so it takes less memory and that kind of thing. And this unlocking the existing design is something that extends beyond just housing to even character creation. And it's one of the reasons that I actually like the older games where you could do whatever you wanted with your character design within limits, right? So you decided what you were going to do with your stats, whereas a lot of newer games, when your character levels up, you don't decide. You've got a warlock or something. You don't decide I want to add 5 points to my wisdom. The warlock automatically, as part of the game, will add 5 points to wisdom and 1 point to strength and 2 points to con, because that's what a warlock is supposed to do. And then it'll give you the option as a player in many cases of deciding that you want to do something a little different, right? And the reason they do that is because it helps them balance the game. City of Heroes actually is not too bad in terms of that flexibility, but they definitely lock you in a lot of ways. So for example, you don't get to decide what your endurance is. It's always 100. You don't get to decide what it's 100 unless you get an accolade, right? You don't get to decide what your health is, right? My character I didn't beat any leaders, so I don't know why this is finished, but just let me show you this. My health is 912. I have no impact on that. We didn't defeat any leaders. How is this possible? I feel like it's bugged. There should have been a leader in here. I'm going to look before we leave because we can't come back in. A Stalker has a certain number of health, right? And that's what all Stalkers have. And I don't get to, give myself a con bonus in order to improve my health or something like that. There's no, Drek isn't in here. That's kind of frustrating. I can't improve my health even if I want. I can't improve my endurance even if I want. Again, unless you get certain accolades. But there's no, statistics choices. When you level up, your health improves, but it improves the way the developers say, right? So you can't say, well, I want to be a high health blaster. No. They decide at every level what health your blaster has, and you don't get a say, right? The only say you have is with enhancement sets. Well, that finishes it. The good news is that the Freak Show faction war seems to be over for now. The bad news is Drek once again is firmly in control of the Freak Show. At least we've learned a great deal about their activities over the last few days. Their connection to Cray is something we'll have to keep in mind, as well as their willingness to perform mercenary work for themselves in cybernetic technology. Okay. So that finishes Tina's stuff. Who do we have left? We have Peter Stemets in Founders Falls. And Jenny Firkins. I don't think we've done her story arc, have we? She needs me to go to save a Cray lab from the Freak Show. Haven't we done this already? Okay, well, we'll save that Cray lab in Brickstown. So, yeah, I mean, City of Heroes locks you in with some things and gives you freedom with others. So, for example, they lock you in with your powers, right? Once you pick claws, you're done with claws, right? That's your offensive power set. And then they unlock certain powers at certain levels, and realistically, you're going to get most of the powers as they unlock. You might skip one, like I skipped Swipe. You might pick it later or something like that, but you're going to pick most of the primaries. You're going to pick most or all the secondaries, and you're going to pick them about when they come active, right? It used to be a choice as a player whether you were going to get the fitness power pool, but now everybody just gets it. And then you're going to pick a movement power, and then you get slots. And the real build of the character isn't the power sets, it's the slotting and what you put in the slots. And then with ED, what is all this? Oh, those are police. With enhancement diversification, they kind of removed your ability to control that by making it so that you can't 6-slot things for one type of enhancement, and then free yourself up to put other enhancements in other powers. So this idea of like 6-slotted perma haste and then not putting any recharge enhancers on your powers, they pretty much stopped that. So you're allowed to put whatever enhancements you want in your powers, but they generally don't. But you can only do certain things that will count, and then other ways of doing it simply would be useless. So putting more than 3 damage enhancers on a power is not worth it, for example. And but you do have some creativity with which pool powers you pick, and with how you slot things, and when you put your slots in, and that sort of stuff. And with enhancement sets, they definitely gave people a lot of creativity for that. So, so there is some control over over what you're doing with your build, but not a huge amount. I feel like in a lot of other games, the control is even less. You control what loot you have, kind of, to some degree, and that's about it. And so, yeah, I got very frustrated, like in World of Warcraft, when I saw that like I didn't control what stats my character had, like whatever it was, strength, constitution, I don't know. But I didn't control that. It just went up. They decided how it went up per level, right? And it just was automatic. And I realized, of course, as I was thinking about it, well, City of Heroes is the same thing, right? You can't do anything to change how much health you get per level, or you couldn't back then, right? That is decided by the developers, and that's just the way it is. And I prefer... Ooh, we got a damage enhancer? Cool. For mutation. I prefer being able to have that control and saying, okay, I want to do something non-standard and try it and see how it works. What was that, a badge for taking damage? Big red punching bag, you take a beating and don't seem to call it quits. So either was for being hit or taking damage. I always like to have that control. I know why the developers don't like players to have it, and it's because it can lead to unbalanced characters. Either you can, most of the time, what's going to happen is you're going to gimp yourself, right? Which means make yourself weaker, right? So if I said, oh, I want to, say, take points away from my health and give them to my endurance, that could dramatically gimp me as a regen scrapper in ways that if I'm an inexperienced player, I might not be able to deal with, right? And the other thing that happens, of course, is people who min-max and they make their character incredibly powerful. So that would be things like, you know, the tankers who, the tanker who got to level 40 in one day because he figured out using burn and taunt and slotting them the right way and hasten, he was able to do massive amounts of damage to enemy mobs who were being forced to like come into his burn patches and commit suicide essentially. So that kind of thing is of course possible and is more likely when you allow flexibility. Personally, I've always felt that the risk of that kind of power gaming or of gimping is worth it for the freedom. And I do like freedom when you're building characters and stuff. But I understand, you know, why they don't give it to you. On the other hand, when we talk about what I started with, housing, why they don't give you more freedom with that is a lot harder for me to get on board with. I think the main reason is they just don't want to allocate the resources, both in terms of the real-time server resources to deal with variability in where you place objects, which is going to make the server do a lot more calculations than if there's only one place each object can go. And they also don't want to deal with building the system that allows the kind of flexibility that players who want to exercise their artistic creativity would want, right? It's a lot easier just to build something with anchor points and say, here, put these predetermined objects at this anchor point, right? It requires a lot less coding to do that than it would to allow me to put anything I want anywhere. So, and similarly, it requires a lot less coding and a lot less balance to just have every Stalker have the same number of hit points and then you know what they have, than it would be if you allowed Stalkers to change their number of hit points based on allocating attributes at each level, rolling equivalent of rolling a hit point die, right? And there's a kidnapped person. So we're looking for 3 scientists here. Found one. I do want to point out, we are operating 100% on single origin enhancements, guys. We have no sets, we have no inventions. We're just operating on regular, oh, and I wanted to mess with this, regular single origin enhancers. And we are doing super well. We are level 33, and we are fighting level 36 enemies with absolutely no problem. We almost never have to touch our inspirations, and we're just kicking their butt and taking their names. And half the time I don't even have to touch my own heal powers. This character is really quite enjoyable, and I'm very pleased with how she's playing. And I have to say, you know, to be honest, I'm not putting massive amounts of intellectual effort into calculating my build, right? I'm just kind of taking what feels right at the time. I know for a fact that I will have enough slots to slot just about everything, especially if I don't take that 9th attack power, and especially if I don't slot revive, which I probably never will. I will have enough slots to 3 and 4 and 6 slot things that need to have those numbers of slots. So 3 on the passives, 4 on the toggles, and 6 on the click powers. I should have enough slots for that because I had that many slots on my martial arts scrapper. So it's really a matter of what do you want to get when, which things are necessary now versus which powers or which enhancements can you wait to put on. So for example, the decision to, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. The decision to go with the endurance reducers on these first 2 powers, Strike and Slash, now versus doing it, say, at level 37. That's just your call, you know, like how you want to do it. And I really do this sort of thing by feel. I know the numbers, right? I know how the numbers work. I know how the game plays. I know how the stats work, and you know what the percentages are for to hit and all of that. But to some degree, I play it by ear. You know, I play by the feel of the character. And okay, I feel like I need more endurance on this character. I better put some endurance reducers. I feel like I need to do more damage on this character, so I better start putting in slotting in some damage. I feel like I need to do heal faster, so I better slot my heal powers. I feel like I need to assassinate better. I'd better get placate or whatever. So let's placate that guy, and then we will smack this guy around. And finish him off. And then we will grab this guy. So I do a lot of this kind of just by my sense as I've been playing the game, you know. Similar to how I like click the powers, I'm mostly doing it just by kind of the feel. Alright, this character is taking a little bit of a beating. I feel like I might need to hit hasten here so I can get her, you know, reconstruction back faster. You see how fast this recharges? This thing recharges so fast when you have hasten. Oh, okay. This guy must have aggroed to me, so there we go. Save Cray from the freaks. So we got all of those guys. We must just have to finish somebody off. So yet again, I've missed somebody. So I'll have to look around. So yeah, I mean, I think some of it just comes from having played the game a lot, right? That you have a sense of kind of how the character should play, how hard it should be. If you're constantly taking a knee, you're like, okay, if it's for endurance, all right, I need to get some endurance reducers or get stamina slotted. If you're, I feel like there should be guys up here. Did they like fail to spawn or something? If you're constantly taking a knee because of health, then maybe you need to slot your healing powers, or slot your defenses. If you're constantly being stunned, then you need to get your Mez defense in, or carry break freeze, or whatever it happens to be. And so it's just, I kind of do it by the intuition of it. And I know a lot of people prefer, really min-maxing everything, but I don't see the need for that. And as you can see with this character, we aren't min-maxed at all, and we're doing fine. Okay, so I have no idea what this means. Let's go out. It's a small mission with only 2 levels, so let's go out and come back in and see if we can force the enemies to spawn. As I said in the last episode, I feel like this happens a lot on this server, more than it did on Homecoming, and I wonder if either Leandro in his private server days or the Homecoming guys did some work to fix all of the bugs that used to exist in this game where the enemies just would not spawn. I mean, this is a really tiny map. What could I have possibly missed? I've been all over this map. Right, so now we go to the next level. There isn't another elevator as far as I can see. And I've been all over this map too. See? Aha! Now you guys are my witnesses. He was not there. Right, so this is a guy who didn't spawn, and now he has spawned. Right, so he must have... So what this means is he spawned inside this wall here probably, or maybe inside this wall. My guess is inside this wall. And in fact, since there's usually guys up top, I bet he spawned up in the wall in here, and when I walked back in, it forced him out, and he was standing there. And I feel like this happens a lot more here on Rebirth than it used to happen in Homecoming. I don't remember it happening much at all. Alright, so we've got a clue now. The Freak Show's plans. The Freaks stole their latest biotech gadget, the Craze. And it's called the Cellular Regenerator. It was due to appear in hospitals. As soon as we got approval, the regenerator repairs human tissue at a phenomenal rate. The Freaks probably want it so they can make more implants on themselves. So now we have to defeat 30 Freak Show and question them about this product and where it is. But I'm going to do that off screen, guys, because we're at 30 minutes. So we're going to stop here. I got a bunch of stuff to sell, and I will bring you back next time after I defeat these 30 freaks, and we will continue. Until then, I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes.